Welcome. Welcome to Leaders Transforming Global Consciousness, a place for thought leaders and consciousness influencers to share their stories, struggles, breakthroughs, and actionable steps on possible paths participants can follow and roles they can play in a post-crisis rebirth and awakening. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Elizabeth Krasnoff, PhD, who was born and raised in New York, but now lives in the West Coast in San Francisco, who has been featured in many publications, including San Francisco Yoga Magazine, World Futures, Awareness Ascending, Journal of Conscious Evolution, Awake, Gateways to Awakening, Energy Magazine, and others. Welcome, Elizabeth.
That's a lot of awakening there. Thank you. Thank you, Christian.
A reflection of who you are and the work that you do.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have you. Thank you for being here with us and sharing your time with us. So as the intro says, you have a PhD in transformative studies with a focus in consciousness studies at CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, organization that I love and where I've spoken in the past, and where other people I love and respect have also teach.
Nice.
Your dissertation reviews the transformative effects of sound, specifically the effects of auditory binaural beats on consciousness and the nervous system. So, I mean, obviously you can't tell us about the whole dissertation, but what can you tell us about it? How did you get into sound medicine and binaural beats?
So it started for me with kind of what I call the original wound, you know, the original defect or failure. And that is my deafness. I am deaf, I'm half deaf, and I was born that way, but I didn't know until I was 19.
It's amazing.
It is, my dissertation is actually dedicated to Helen Keller, because losing a sense, for me, losing hearing, it's profoundly isolating. And it's a metaphor for releasing the shame about the thing that you think you have failed at or that is wrong with you, and reaching out, and only you can do that, and joining the loving community around you that is waiting for you. That is my metaphor, that is my path. And through this, I learned that it is not in the way, it is the way.
I love that.
Whatever you think, those are signposts. And whatever you think it is that's blocking you is actually a really clear street sign saying, turn this way, come here. So I did suffer a lot of alienation and a lot of, it was very traumatic, the early years. And the thing that was always with me was music and sound. I say the umbrella for my work is sound, healing, and consciousness. And I sort of, that umbrella is what I shielded myself from the storm with and reached out. The music was always with me. And back in those days, we had Walkmen. You know, you would have to surgically remove the earphones from my ears. You know, it's the way I felt connected. I didn't know why. Why did those vibrations bring me back to feeling human and loved and connected? Why? Right? And then there's 35 years of study that come after that question.
Right. So let's pause on that for a minute, because I want to, well, first of all, in reference to the umbrella, I'm wearing this Om shirt in your honor, the primordial sound, because I know that your work is about sound, obviously, and that you hold it in a sacred way. So help me understand, how could you not know that you were deaf in one ear? Is that related to the binaural part of your work?
I was deaf in both ears. It's called a cookie bite crunch, and they think it's genetic.
Oh.
And it is, so the human hearing range is from 20, I'll get a little technical. Human hearing range is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So low to high, if you picture across the spectrum like that. And in this type of hearing loss, you're coming along fine. And then you come to the ranges where the human voice is and where water is. And you just dip down to about 50%. And then you dip back up for the high ranges. So what happens is you compensate. You lip read. I stand very close to people and look right in their faces, which can be uncomfortable for some people. I watch your emotional, your energy very carefully. I pay a lot of attention to the energy and the emotions around a person. In the healing arts of energy healing, it's called clairsentience. So in the world of brain science, when you have one piece of your brain that's not being used, that those circuits, those pathways rewire, and another sense takes over. So for people who are blind, sense of touch becomes very emphasized. Sense of hearing becomes very emphasized. For people with less hearing, maybe it's visuals. For me, it was emotions. Something else becomes emphasized, so that the brain is miraculous. I study the auditory brain. And so whatever is not happening that's in the regular pathway, the brain just says, oh, okay, no problem. We're going to reroute. And we're going to make a new, like a switchboard is not nearly as complicated as the human brain, but literally it just decides to find new pathways, to find a new homeostasis. So we can talk about binaural beats here.
Well, we'll pause on that. I want to, before you get into the binaural beats, and maybe I'm just prepping myself for this, for the science, that will be a stretch. But the umbrella is sound, music, and consciousness.
Sound, healing, and consciousness. So what I did was I went through the great books tradition, which introduced me to Richard Tarnas and the Passion of the Western Mind, where I understood that we could conceive of things differently than they had been presented to us for the last 2,000 years. I did my master's in depth psychology and mythology at Pacifica Graduate Institute, Joseph Campbell, Maria Gimbutas, and Jung, where I started to understand energy archetypally, right? The great mother, the great father, love and forgiveness as the center of really all of our traditions across time and geography. And from there, then I went on and I got 4 certifications and a PhD. I opened my business, Sound Medicine. I became a singer-songwriter through all of this, always writing and singing and playing music, even though I had to struggle so hard to hear pitch, because you can't sing what you can't hear. But I did, at age 19, I developed a debilitating tinnitus. I get a lot of clients with tinnitus. And it will drive you. I just got an email today. My friend is thinking of ending his life because of these sounds that he cannot control. It sounds very dramatic to say that. It sounds like, well, I mean, hey, let's just, take a step back. But if you think about it, it is an element that they use to torture people. When you can't control the sound in your head, you've lost control. It's horrifying.
Yeah,
so
no,
that
it doesn't sound dramatic to me at all. It's like, I can understand that completely.
Okay, so it happened to me at age 19. That's why I went to the hospital. And that's how come I found out I was deaf. They said, oh, this happens often with someone with a hearing loss. And I said, okay, that's really funny, but what's really happening? And they said, you're really deaf. So I put on the hearing aids and had a major crisis when I got to my apartment because it was raining, which sounded to me like an invasion or a stampede. And the walls were all crawling. I thought there was snakes in the walls because I had not heard the water pipes before. And then a whole new world opened up for me. I've had since 8 hearing aids, 8 different models since then. And I now know why this happens, but each time you get a new hearing aid, your brain has to learn how to hear again. So sometimes I would hear 2 different sounds, the mechanical sound and the natural sound. And it would take weeks for my brain to weave them together till I heard one natural sound. So there I am, a singer-songwriter, trying to hear my sound, trying to hear myself. What is behind hearing? What is behind hearing, Christian, is deep, deep listening.
Yeah.
And what is behind deep listening is the stillness.
Mm.
I am.
Mm. That's exquisite. That's beautifully said.
Sound healing consciousness.
Okay, beautiful. I love that. Right. So, and I know a lot of sound healers. So that part I get completely. And I also know the power of music to alter states of consciousness as a breathwork practitioner, and leading people in kind of those type of expanded consciousness experiences. I know that it can impact consciousness, but talk to us more about that. How can sound alter a state of consciousness?
So I opened sound medicine. I had done Tomatis method. I certified as a sound healing practitioner. I certified as an intuitive, all serious certifications taking years. I certified as a heart math practitioner in biofeedback. And I certified as a shamanic practitioner, where we use Icaros. In my tradition from the Shipibo in Peru and the Huichol in Mexico. I wove all these things together. And I had this practice where I was helping people heal using sound. I went back and got the PhD because I said, what is the science behind this? Why is this actually working? I want people to trust me when I am helping them. And personally, I need both the head and the heart. Yeah. I wanted to understand. So I said, well, let me select binaural beats, because in my toolkit here is this very interesting thing in my sound bed kit of tools called binaural beats. I use them for 15 minutes on my clients, and they become so relaxed. They become so receptive.
And so let's dive into that. What are they, and how do you use them?
How do you use them? So I took my dissertation to answer that question, to do a review of the field. And I was very surprised to learn there was a lot of information out there. Nobody was doing this yet. So we're talking 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And 2015, 7 years ago. People weren't really doing this yet, but there was a lot of information. And by the time I wrapped up my clinical studies, I only used peer-reviewed studies published in reputable journals. I used 26 of them. I understood that there was quite a lot of material. And then the wave began. So right now, if you Google on YouTube binaural beats, you will see 40 million hits.
Wow.
The most recent drug survey had binaural beats as a category. 30,000 people answered this survey around the globe. Wow. And I believe 16% of them were using binaural beats. And they were using them for relaxation. They were using them for sleep. They were using them to change their states of consciousness. How can that happen? So people are on to this. People are onto this. So I'm going to preface all of this under the term biohacking.
Okay.
Brain hacking. We are in a place right now where, we're all recovering from pandemic. Wherever we were on our spectrum of mental illness, we have been pushed to the edge. And we're all saying, how can I come back to center? Right now, neuroscience has made such an extraordinary leap into understanding our electrical system. Okay, our electrical system is our nerves, our nervous system. We can measure our nervous system now, Christian, and we can say, okay, here are the basic bands of experience that correlate to these states of consciousness that we are experiencing. And by that, I'm referring to the high band, gamma, coming down to beta, which is everyday production and consciousness, coming down to, let's see, who do we have next?
Alpha.
Before theta is alpha. Then we have alpha and theta. Those are kind of our meditative frequencies, and then down into delta for sleep. Okay. Now we have all of those frequencies. Those are frequencies happening in our nervous system, in our brain all the time. Okay. We're talking about top notes, like the major notes in a glass of wine that you drink. It's a little bit oaky. It's a little bit sweet, right? So we're saying that the frequency of theta is predominant when we're in a relaxation state, right? So in the fields of neuroscience, in biofeedback, in sleep, in cognitive behavior, in the world of psychology, in all of these fields, we're saying, hey, wait a minute, we can measure what's happening in our electrical system, in our nervous system. And by the way, our nervous system is a rhythm. Our electrical system is a rhythm. By the way, all of our systems are rhythms, and our heart is the drum beat. Our heart is the center rhythm. Okay, that's
our nervous system is a rhythm. I love
rhythm. This is real science. Let me give you the example of what's happening in your heart. So in our heart, there's a place where the nerve cells must beat together. It's called coupled oscillation. Each little nerve cell must oscillate with the nerve cell next to it and beat together. Okay, all of those little cells beating together, guess what? That's your heart rate. And it must beat in order for you to have life. So at the center of your life is a rhythm.
True.
Your endocrine system is also a rhythm. Your cardiovascular system is also a rhythm, right? And we measure it, beats per minute. 1 beat per minute is a 1 hertz cycle. A hertz is how many times this oscillation, this wave happens in 1 second. Okay. So your heart is kind of a 1 hertz rhythm if you're at 60 BPM. Okay. So
fascinating. I hadn't looked at it that way, but yes.
Right. So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about measuring the rhythms that are happening in your electrical system. Now, what is sound? You're actually delivering, it's a mechanical wave pressure, okay? But what you are delivering is electricity. There are 4 energy transductions that happen. You have air waves, this mechanical pressure wave, and it goes into your eardrum. And then you have a Morse code tapping. That's what those little bones are for. Then you have mechanical waves. That's 2. Then it goes into your cochlea. There's water in there, which is our sort of primordial first way of hearing. And it was our first construction. Neuroscientist Dr. Nina Kraus talked a lot about that to me in the last interview. I just interviewed her. So then we go back into water, which is where sound waves are so effective, right? So that's your 3rd form of waves, water waves. And then it goes into your brainstem and becomes electrical, goes into your nervous system. These are electrical signals now going from neuron to neuron. You have delivered electricity to your brain, to your system. So that, and then the pathway, it goes up the midbrain. You don't hear here in your ear. It goes up the midbrain and out to your auditory cortex. This is where you hear. And that's the pathway of regular sound. What is binaural sound and what is binaural beats? Any clarifying questions before I get to binaural sound?
I think I'm fascinated. You're doing a beautiful job of explaining. Like, I just hadn't seen it in that way before.
Right on, right on. Yeah, we're on. So let's say biohacking, there are many spokes to that wheel, right? Sound is one, light is another, yoga, breathing, dancing, drumming, psychedelics.
Mm.
These are all ways we have of having a relationship to our brain rhythms and their correlative states of consciousness.
Mm.
All these things are changing our states of consciousness. Let's say regular consciousness, everyday consciousness for many people, not all people, is beta consciousness, right? Beta is the predominant wave. We're producing, we're doing, we're motivated, right? How do you change out of beta? How do you relax? How do you focus?
Yes.
Okay, so we're now talking about how sound does that. Now, binaural sound.
And you're also talking about how sound heals.
And how sound heals. So that's another, those are two separate discussions. So thank you for making that distinction, because there are many ways that sound heals. We're going to talk about one way. We can also talk about how rhythm heals.
Okay.
Okay. There's a lot of different ways that sound can heal as a pressure wave. They're using it to help broken bones heal right now in hospitals. That's actual science. You heard me say that, you can Google that and find that, or I can, make studies available. I'm going to be very clear when I'm talking about a study or when I'm talking about a hypothesis.
Okay, good. Okay? Thank you.
Pressure of a sound wave can help heal a bone. It works on the pressure of the cells. Rhythm.
Before you move on from that, aren't there theories that like some of the ways that the ancients moved these huge boulders and built pyramids, that it was using sound waves?
There's a lot of theories around that. We don't have any concrete evidence, but there's a whole field around that.
So our science is not there yet in terms of using the sound waves to move things.
That's correct. Not that I know of.
Okay.
We use sonar. I believe the military has been using sonar since, it could be 1906 or earlier.
That early, wow.
They use sonar to detect everything that's happening underwater. They use like the way a bat would use echolocation. That's also in use in industry. The oil industry uses that type of sound for locating what they need to locate for their oil finds. The military has actively used sound. And a lot of people say to me, well, can this stuff be used for bad? And my answer is everything can be used for bad. A hammer, a knife, a stove, anything you see on the table in front of you, a pen can be used to write a poem or to stab someone. Everything can be used for bad.
What do you know, by the way, in this, and we'll get back to the other conversation, but have you read about the Havana syndrome and
exactly where I was going. So they used, and I read all the mainstream press on that, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. I clipped those articles. I read them carefully. They are fairly convinced that that was ultrasound, very high frequency ultrasound that made those people sick. So
would you explain that a little bit so that people who may not have read about it know what we're talking about?
So people in these embassies came down with very strange symptoms that seemed like flu symptoms. They were nauseous. They had headaches. It was a little bit like COVID. They had to.
And there was bleeding too, bleeding from the ears, right?
Bleeding from the ears. It was serious. It was serious enough that they had to leave their positions and vacate. And it was very much suspected. I don't know if we can say proved, but I think the consensus among all the people who you would give authority to on the topic, the consensus was that it was these high-pitched ultrasound waves, ultrasonic waves, and that those can be used as weapons in this manner. And in these articles that I'm referencing, they also talked about how malls, everyday shopping malls, use ultrasound to disperse crowds. When they don't want teenagers congregating, they will send an unpleasant sound, so high-pitched you can't hear it, that will cause the crowds to disperse. We use sound to keep out unwanted animals. You can do that. But I mean, think about it. You could use a high pitched frequency to get everyone off this call right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Sort
I
of like
mean,
the fingernails on the
yeah.
boardwalk, on the blackboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound is a sense. We have an organ that perceives the sense, which is our brain, with the help of our ear. You can use it negatively as well as positively to heal. Now, sound is 100% unregulated. There is no regulation of sound in industry, in government, in the military. The only place that we're really trying to regulate sound and understand it is in the healing arts. But there is no regulation of sound. By the way, there's no regulation of electricity. I mean, how many waves do we have going through us right now?
Right.
Wi-Fi, electrical, telephone, television, phone, earbuds. So we talk about this a lot in many of the classes that I teach. And I say, there's absolutely no reason to panic.
Good.
This is the world we're living in. So, you know, you can do things. You can be in charge of your sound. You can turn all your notifications off, and you decide when you look at your social media and when you look at your phone. Turn all your notifications off. Have a quiet zone in your home. The study shows, there's research that shows that children who were on the highway side of the school scored lower than children who were on the quiet side of the school. That's science. That research was in Nina Krause's recent book, Of Sound Mind. So
what about, is there technology that can protect us from like all these waves that you're talking about, including the 5G in our homes?
Yeah. I personally bought some things that are designed to protect our electromagnetic field. I don't have any science to back them up. But I know a lot of people, I know some people that have, so let me first define what is the Schumann frequency. The Schumann frequency is a measurement of the frequency that exists in nature. NASA measures that frequency. It's 7.83 hertz. That's theta. It's a meditational state for us. And it has something to do with the electrical fields, you know, when lightning strikes the earth and then the resonance between that and the soil. My knowledge doesn't go that far. There are plenty of people that understand exactly how that frequency is created, but it's a real thing. And it has to do with the electromagnetic field that's created in our atmosphere, that's present in nature, and is extremely relaxing and meditative for the human brain and nervous system. Okay, so I know people that have in their city homes or apartments or offices a Schumann frequency resonator, which will take the entire room and turn it into 7.83 hertz. I do not have any science for that.
Okay.
So the Schumann frequency is real, is measured by NASA. I know people that try to recreate it in their city environments. That is experimental. But I do know that people do things like that to try to harmonize their sound frequencies. There are, if you went online and Googled, there are little boxes that you can plug into your electrical sockets that harmonize your all the electrical rhythms from all the different electricity sources in your house. We don't really have a way of combating and harmonizing all of the sound waves in our life. What I do personally, what is my practice? I go out onto the earth each morning. It's called earthing. And I stand on the earth. We're batteries. We're batteries, and we can stand on the earth, which many people, so here, are we in science or are we in hypothesis? I don't know, we're in the middle right here. We're in the middle right now. There are some extremely accomplished physicists that speak very passionately on this topic, that you can recharge yourself as a battery by standing on the earth and let all of these electrical signals just clean off of you, let them fall off of you and ground back into the earth. I do that. It clears my head. Look, here's something I'm going to say. Every auditory brain is different. No two auditory brains are alike. No two brains are alike. No two people are alike. You are the sum of your personal experiences. And you have to intuitively choose all of the modalities in your life that work for you, whether it be sound or earthing, whether it be from proven science, well, what is proven, whether it be from evidenced science, whether it be from your intuition. You have to intuit your routine and what works for you and what you need to do each day. How will you know when that happens, Christian? How will you know when your routine is right for you or when an exercise is right for you? How would you know, Christian?
It's that deep sense of knowing that it just feels right. And
Yeah.
and maybe that is vibration.
Yeah, it vibrates well in your heart. I'm in my heart space. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling balanced. I feel good.
Yeah.
And when I stand on the earth and allow myself to connect down to the center of the earth and just connect right through to this, from the spirit to the earth, that's shamanic frameworks I'm talking about now. I learned that from my shamanic community. I do that.
Connecting with Pachamama.
Yeah, connecting with Pachamama. I sing my prayers. I set my frequency. So here now we're talking about my intuitive practice. This is Elizabeth's intuitive practice. I set my frequency. It's like a radio dial. I say, I'm going to be on this frequency today, and I'm going to make such a strong frequency, such a strong wave that it's going to be really hard to knock me off of it. Okay, so we're going to talk about two principles of sound healing right now.
And I love that, by the way, doesn't it make sense to make sure that our energy is resonant with the mother's energy? Like, it makes all sorts of sense to me.
Exactly, all sorts of sense. She's unconditional. To align yourself with a source of unconditional love to start your day, it tells your subconscious, I am a source of unconditional love, and I am going to look for unconditional love everywhere I look today. That's a good start to a day.
Yeah, like attracts like.
Like attracts like. So you set your frequency. Every word you use, every mantra that you use is a frequency. Words are frequencies. Vowels are expanding. Here you have that sound there, right? What sound is that? What were they doing so deep in those practices for 6,000 years over there with this primordial sound, right?
Yes.
The sound of ah takes you right into the heart. Ah, it's a great meditation before you go into a meeting. Ah, sa, setting that frequency. I get relaxed just doing. See, and then I go right into a deep breath. See that synergy there, the breath and the sound?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's fascinating, though. You're connecting so many things for me. Right. And I'm glad that you're tracking, because you just answered a question about how sound affects consciousness.
Yes.
And I want to make sure we don't leave binaural beats behind.
Yes. So let's make our way back there. So the prayers and the earthing, all of that, I set my frequency, I set my energy to come back to that place whenever I need to during the day. And it could just be with the sound, ah. That's low tech. Okay, that's low tech sound healing. Binaural beats is a little more high tech. So let's then talk about high tech. And we'll talk about entrainment and resonance. We're not going to lose that thread. So binaural. Binaural sound is any sound that is not directly in front of you. It's over here, it's over here. Binaural hearing is a technique that we have, that our brain has, of locating ourselves in time and space. So I hear a sound over here. What is it? Is it going to kill me? Can I eat it? Can I mate with it? What is it? Where is it?
You're getting down to basics.
Down to basics. It is one of our basic survival skills in this magnificent brain and nervous system that is the most sensitive and advanced circuitry on this planet for understanding information. So it interfaces with this sea of vibrations around us, this data. How extraordinary. This is my passion. Okay, so we have this sound location circuitry. We don't know the pathways. We don't know the pathways. We don't know how binaural sound travels through our brain. We trace it to we trace it to a spot in the midbrain. I'm not going to go into all the technical names, but we know that it goes like this far into the midbrain, and then we can find it again out here. The auditory cortex in the middle. How is it happening? Okay, so the theory, the hypothesis is that it's going into the reticular activating system network, the RAS. The RAS is kind of like a triage in the center of our brain. It's in the area of the hypothalamus. And it tells us what to pay attention to. It digests all our sensory information. Sight, sound, smell, touch, internal and external. It's called, in the neuroscience textbooks, the gateway to consciousness. And it has 3 gears.
Now you're talking about the RAS, not the hypothalamus.
The RAS.
Is it right to describe the hypothalamus as a computer router that directs that sensory information that comes in through the senses to different parts of the brain?
It's not a bad definition at all. I've heard it referred to as the searchlight for consciousness. So now we're not going to be so bold and hubristic as to define consciousness here, but one definition that works in this context is an arousal of awareness.
So that's a definition of consciousness, an arousal of awareness. One I can see that
possible definition in which I am becoming aware of you, Christian. Now that I'm aware of you, I can make a relationship to you. Right? And now we grow. Now there's a we. This is the architecture of consciousness. Music is the architecture of consciousness. Pythagoras understood these relationships 2,000 years ago. He started measuring all these ratios and saying, oh, that's a third. That's the same. These planets and these things and these cells, that's the same as a third. That's the same as a fifth. Stuart Hameroff, who runs the Center for Consciousness Studies at Arizona State University and the Science of Consciousness conference each year, says that if the brain is like anything, it's like music. And many physicists will tell you that. Often physicists are musicians. They're saxophone players or violin players or pianists. Einstein, I believe, was a violinist. There is such a strong connection. Music and math are languages for understanding the intelligence that permeates this universe, this consciousness.
It's beautiful how you're weaving it all together. It's really beautiful.
It comes together. So here we are trying to find our way into the brain. The brain works as a whole. Nina Kraus is adamant about this. You're not going to put your finger on one spot in the brain and say, that's where it is. Everything. The auditory brain, it's the whole brain. The auditory brain is going to the motor brain. It's going to the reward brain. It's going to the cognitive brain. It's going everywhere. Okay. So this hypothalamus in the center, the searchlight for consciousness, the reticular activating system, 3 gears, which are kind of, to me, like the 5 gears. The way I explain this to people, if you've ever driven a car, if you've ever driven a manual, there's 5 gears, fast, down to slow, right? So those are the 5 brain waves that we're studying right now, the speeds that we operate at in our nervous system and our brain. The RAS has 3 speeds, which is awake, and then the mid state, which is sort of like half conscious, semi-conscious, and then sleep. Those are our 3 basic gears. And we arouse and then we de-arouse, right? So maybe binaural beats, maybe some of the data from those binaural beatings are going into the RAS. That needs to be researched. We don't have the tools yet. What can we measure? We have EEG. EEG can measure the activity of your brain waves through putting a cap on your scalp and measuring the brain waves and the electrical activity here. We can tell a lot. We can tell where the activity is. We can even tell which sections of your brain are talking to what other sections. That's our gold standard for measuring things right now.
Elizabeth, I'm just fascinated with everything you said. I want to make sure that I ask you a couple of practical questions that somebody who's watching, and you already gave a couple of practical things, like takeaways that people can actually take with them. Sure. So you're right that integrating sound medicine into our daily lives is not only easy, but it's non-invasive and life-altering. What do you mean by that, and how do we do that?
So I talked about some of the low-tech ways.
Yeah.
Humming, singing, sounding, finding words and consonants that soothe you. You can do that anywhere at any time, creating playlists that make you feel a certain way. You have sound medicine at your fingertips 24/7.
Chanting, kirtan,
drumming, any. Make the sounds that make you feel a certain way. How do you know if you feel a certain way? Ask your heart. No one else can tell you. That made me feel good. That's your medicine. That's low tech. High tech. No, well, playlists are a little more high tech because now you're getting into your smartphone. Let's talk about binaural beats now. So binaural beats are taking advantage of that binaural pathway and creating an extended binaural sound. So in 1973, Dr. Gerald Oster, a physicist, really put binaural beats on the map and said, these are different from monaural beats, and they do these things. And I think we could use them as a diagnostic tool. He didn't know they would be a therapeutic tool. What is a binaural beat? A binaural beat is when you divide a tone and create a difference tone. And the difference...
Like overtoning, you mean?
Phasing.
So overtoning is not a binaural?
That's different. It's phasing. It's like the difference by which you create the tone is the brain wave that you're trying to activate, resonate. So let's say, so the research shows, now there's some research, and then there's a lot of intuitive guessing going on in this field. It's a leading edge field. So a lot of the research supports the fact that, between 200 and 500 hertz as a carrier frequency is shown to be the most effective. So what does that mean? That means I take a carrier frequency of 440 hertz. That's an A on the piano. And I separate it by 8 hertz. So now I have 436 hertz in one ear. You have to wear stereo headphones to hear this. And then I have 444 hertz in the other ear. I've now created a difference tone of 8 hertz that doesn't exist anywhere except for in my brain. Because in the musical channels that's coming in, there's only 436 in the left ear and 444 in the right ear. Inside my brain, there's an 8 hertz difference. And the brain has to reconcile that. And somehow in the process of reconciling that 8 hertz difference, it seems that it is resonating an 8 hertz wave or frequency, brain wave, in our brains. That is being measured with frequency following response. That was the first biomarker that determined that something was actually happening. So we can see it. We can see it happening. And then studying with EEG, you can see it. Looking with functional connectivity, which brain sections are talking to what other brain sections, you can see it. I myself have done a pilot study. I did it double blind and controlled because obviously I use binaural beats in my practice, and I make binaural beats. And by the way, if anybody would like some binaural beats tracks, they are free on my website, sound-medicine.com.
Well, and before, since you opened that question, I know that you're generously offering some tracks for the people in the summit. So we're going to make sure they have a link to your website. And so what is exactly the gift that you're offering to encourage people to get on your email list?
Well, if you just go to my website, you can click on a link and get a free binaural beat track for relaxation. That'll take you about 15 seconds. If you sign up for my newsletter, there's another free track for creativity called Waves for Creativity. And you
say that this beat track provides the same benefit as meditation.
Yeah, it's like doing a meditation. So it's very important in the scientific community that I say that I give that disclaimer, because in the scientific community, they like to be very clear if you are using the thing you are studying, and I am. So in my pilot study, the reason why I can call my binaural beats evidence-based is because I went into a lab, I created my tracks offsite, and then I labeled them 1, 2, 3, and 4 and sent those tracks. So nobody knew which track was which. So that was the double blind. Other technicians were administering the tracks. And then there was a control track, which was just brown noise. And then I took pictures of the brain. I used EEG. I also did cardiovascular measurements. I also did energy measurements, and we watched what happened to the brain.
Amazing.
Under the influence of binaural beats. And I also made the binaural beats inaudible. I really put my neck on the line here, because I had read in Dr. Oster's study that you did not have to hear the beats. They did not have to be audible in order for them to work. So I made the beats inaudible. So I had 2 control tracks and 2 tracks with binaural beats, inaudible, and nobody knew which tracks were which. And we watched the brain completely calm down. So,
and what about the part where you said that maybe this is, I don't know where it is in the theory versus evidence-based, that binaural beats actually synchronize the 2 different hemispheres?
So I had, in my 26 studies that I reviewed, 4 studies. I believe they were published in neuroscience journals that showed through functional connectivity that the brain hemispheres began talking to each other and synchronizing across that wavelength. So that was pretty significant. Now, I also personally, so who can use binaural beats? Why would you use them? How could you bring this technology into your life? So when I use binaural beats, when I use the relaxation ones, I'm very sensitive to sound. I can literally feel when my energy is kind of focused over to the right or over to the left, if I've been thinking a lot, or if I'm very scattered, I can literally feel my energy come to the center, and I will direct it. It's important to give yourself suggestions when you're using this. Binaural beats are synergistic. They work with other technologies. The more you can stack the cards in your favor, the better. So when I make the music, I have a suggestion script on my website of things that you should say to yourself to get yourself in a meditative state. And then I have the music embedded in a musical track that also supports the state of consciousness that we're trying to achieve. So for example, I have a relaxation track that is very relaxing music. I use a low BPM, beat per minute of like 60 BPM, beautiful piano music. And then I have the binaural beats embedded under there. And so you will feel very relaxed from the music itself, from the rhythms of the music, and the binaural beats will help that. Now, if you paired that with a breathing practice that you have, or if you paired it with your meditation time of clearing your brain, a lot of people really like the auditory help. You know how you can have visual help. Some meditations, you focus on a visual in front of you. This is like focusing on an auditory. It really speeds up the process We have a lot of data of measuring the brain waves of master meditators and what happens in that state of peak flow, peak relaxation. We can see peak epiphany. We can see peak creativity. We measure all these things in all these other fields. Right? So in the field of binaural beats, they're saying, hey, we can see what's happening in the brain. Why don't we suggest these waves and see if we can reverse engineer it? So in the relaxation one, you have theta beats and alpha beats. Those are relaxation beats, and those are under relaxation music. I make binaural beats in the category of walking meditation. So some people have the 20 minutes to sit and meditate. I'm a meditator. I want to use them. When can I use binaural beats? When you do your meditation practice. That can be in the morning. It can be for busy mothers. Often it's a 20-minute nap in the afternoon. For people who work in offices, it's their lunch break. But I have some clients that come to me and say, I don't like to sit down and meditate. I'm very busy. I'm kind of ADD. I give them walking meditations. So that's a more rhythmic, up-tempo drumming between 80 to 90 beats per minute. And in there, I will still put the theta alpha brain waves because you want to relax, but you can walk and relax at the same time. So I call those walking meditations. Now, I'm making a couple more tracks right now for ADD for use behind studying. So the theory that comes out of the biofeedback field, what they're looking at is that people with ADD are showing to have slower brain waves. They're not showing to come in with the beta brain waves that the rest of us are all in. So they're kind of bored out of their mind in classrooms. They need to make trouble. They need to make drama. They need to do anything to make life more interesting to amp themselves up. One way of doing that is a track with beta brain waves, not alpha theta, beta, to help you focus up a little. So I'm making tracks with rhythms that you can have in the background. I have so many friends with kids that listen to intense music while they're studying. And at first the mothers are like, no, don't do that. And then they realize they're getting their homework done and they're getting good grades. Why? They're stimulating your mind. That's what Adderall does. That's what all of those medications do that we give for ADD. You know, those are strong drugs to focus, to bring up the focus level. So the thought is, wow, well, what if we could do that without the drug? Right? So some therapists are experimenting with that. Can we musically help this person rather than giving a drug? Or maybe it works together, so we give less of the drug. Very exciting opportunities here.
It's amazing because at first it seems counterintuitive that ADD would be that they don't have access to the faster waves. That it's so, but once you explain it, it makes sense.
That's the research that's coming through in the field of biofeedback. So
Elizabeth, I am fascinated by you and your brilliance and the ability to make sense of things that I was maybe concerned that I wasn't going to be able to follow you, but I was able to. You have a beautiful way of explaining complex things in a way that's very understandable. What a gift and what a blessing. I could keep on going, but I'm aware of the time and that we had agreed to a certain time. So I want to be honoring of your time as well. Are there any final thoughts, like anything that comes up for you to wrap up this conversation for the summit participants?
Mm-hmm. The only other thing I would say, the other track that I offered was for creativity. It's for the moment when it's before you create. It's different brain waves before you create and then the peak of creativity. And so this track is for the downtime when you're preparing yourself to channel your new material. That's the second track that I offer. And I'm also creating a new set of tracks that are just called Feel Good, that have some peak brain waves in them for when you just want to feel good. And I think the thing that I want to wrap up with, Christian, is that the most important part of putting together your toolkit for balancing your states of consciousness, there's another set of binaural beats tracks that are about focus, like serious focus, those are gamma tracks. So for those of you that know about this and there's, well, why didn't you mention the 40 hertz? Gamma 40 hertz is for focus, everyone. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, are you trying to focus? Are you trying to feel good? Are you trying to sleep? Do you desperately need to rest and de-stress? Tune back into your intuition. Put together a customized portfolio of what works for you, sound, light, movement, breathing, whatever it is. Constantly check back in with yourself, constantly center yourself in your heart. That is the deep wisdom, the deep silence, the deep stillness that we all need to come from each day. Let your mind be the amazing machine that it is to help you organize all the things that you want, to get back into that space and live from there. And if you are connecting with the people around you in the way that you want to be, if your humanity is where you want it to be at, guess what? You've done it. Enjoy your tools.
Beautiful. And what I'm hearing you say is that, like, qualities like intuition, creativity reside in the slower, deeper brain waves, which is also where we have the feel-good hormones and can access those and that sense of connectedness, of belonging. So we know that conscious meditative practices, by slowing down our own brain waves, we have easier access at choice. And so what you're saying now, you're adding a whole other layer with sound and the binaural beats that can even make that more efficient and more effective to access those states of being.
Yes, very well said. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you.
A beautiful offering you have here, Christian. So I'm feeling so much gratitude for participating and for this offering that you are putting out in the world right now.
I am so grateful. Thank you for those words and for seeing that and for mirroring that. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your brilliance with us. And thank you. Thank you. It's I feel blessed by our time together.
Likewise. Om.
Om indeed.